So, hey guys, and welcome to Diabetic 365, the new episode. And today we have Mike, who has been type 1 diabetic from past 32 years, from 1984. And his mother is also a diabetic from past 53 years. And today we have Mike here to share all his experiences from the past 27 years of type 1 diabetes. So the one small request here is please go through today's diabetic recipe, diabetes tip, and also diabetic exercise. So let's get started. Hey Mike, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Vijay. How is everybody? Hope everybody's well.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Having fun so far.
So tell us your type 1 diabetes story. When were you first diagnosed, and how are all these 27 years of being as type 1?
Well, like you said earlier, I was diagnosed when I was 5. It was roughly early 1984. We don't know the exact date. It was after my mother's father, my grandpa. He had died at the end of January, so we know it was within a couple months of his passing away. And we think it was spring at some point. So I think it was like about a year or so ago. I actually got a replacement pump, so I designated March. Specific day in March is my my anniversary. Just kind of random date choosing on my part. But yeah, I was 5 years old, so roughly in that March time frame of '84. It was just a weekend experience over at my grandparents, my father's parents. I spent the weekend over there and had the classic symptoms that everybody's had, the thirst, the bathrooms, the mood swings as a 5-year-old child might have them. It just wasn't myself. And they recognized pretty quickly that something was wrong. And when my parents came, I think it was the next day, they told my parents, and my mom, being a type 1 herself since 1958, she, her heart pounded and she knew instantly what that meant. So they got me into the pediatrician and then ultimately to Children's Hospital up in Detroit. And that's when I was diagnosed up there officially.
So do you believe in this theory that since your mother is type 1 and you got type 1?
I lean towards that. I'd like to think it's probably the case, but who knows? I mean, they don't know what the rhyme or the reason is exactly, and how much genetics plays into it. And you just have to guess. We're two peas in a pod. We're the lucky ones who are like that.
Okay. So since your mother is also type 1 from past 53 years, and by the way, congrats for her Jocelyn medal that she got a few months back. And so what are some of the things you learned in the way, from your mother?
Well, I guess I don't have a really specific memory of what it was like when I was diagnosed at 5. I mean, this is pretty much all I've ever known. I remember her telling me stories of, when I was first diagnosed and however long afterwards that I didn't want to have the shots. So, they had the orange and, they would hold me down on the couch a little bit. But, ultimately I don't remember learning, I didn't have to relearn anything. It was pretty much the way it had always been. We didn't have a lot of sugar or candy in the house. Everything was pretty much type 1-ified, just based on her. So that was kind of just the way I grew up. And then when I became, diabetic, it was just kind of the way it always was. We had a blood meter. It was, early, mid-'80s, and she had one of those old school brick blood meters back in the day, the first ones for the home, pretty early on. So I was pretty good about having a blood meter back in those days, at home at least, to test. But, of course, I remember using the little, the strips and, the pee on a strip type thing quite a bit. But I think it was my own disease. So I think that's what she taught me more than anything is, you have to live your life first, and try to respect the diabetes as much as possible and not let it hinder you or control your life in any regards. So I think that more than anything is what she taught me. And I may not have learned it very well until my 20s, but she was teaching me, and like my dad too, they were teaching me very young. I think I started taking things over maybe when I was, 9 or 10, for the most part.
So how was the weather when you were in schooling or when you were in college? Was it, you had to face a rough weather, or was it smooth?
It was, I don't think I could describe it either way, really. I was the only diabetic in my school. It was the same school district that my mom had gone to when she was young. And so pretty much everybody had moved on or taken different roles in life at that point. So we basically had to teach everybody, again, what it was like having a diabetic kid in school. So there was a lot of, headaches early on, with her, going to bat for me and, making sure the teachers knew what they had to do and, the lunch ladies and all the different, components of school and, making sure I had a couple, good friends who were kind of like my buddies, my D buddies, and would stick up for me, if they needed to, and they did a couple times, I remember. But early on, when I was in early elementary school, I think it was a little tougher than it got. Basically, and then everybody was just kind of used to it by the time I got into later elementary school and so on. It wasn't that big of a deal.
So since you went to graduate school and then you became a journalist, so as a journalist, you see all these kind of articles that are coming up in the media, like cure type 1 diabetes or reverse diabetes, all this false propaganda, false news that's floating around in the in the media. So as a journalist, how do you take it?
Yeah, really, I'm pretty sad about it, honestly. Just today, before we hooked up and talking here, there was some discussion online about, the whole, insulin pumps being hacked, articles that have been out there and kind of, fueled a lot of discussion. And, recently, the whole ice cream social thing that we were talking about earlier, just, so many misconceptions out there, and it's very sad, for me as a journalist to see reporters and columnists and anybody who's putting themselves out there even as a citizen journalist, not taking the care they need to take in making sure something is accurate, making sure they're checking with the other side, just making sure something is right before putting it out there to the masses. Especially now with everything being online, I mean, it's not confined to a little newspaper in a community anymore. It's everywhere pretty instantly. So I'm pretty sad when you have situations like that, where you have newspapers, screwing things up and just not taking the time, to do what they need to do.
So do you write to them, like the one previously in Reader's Digest? Do you write to those newspapers? Do you write to those, article columns? Telling that what actually is type 1 diabetes and what they have to learn before writing such kind of articles?
I do. I try to be pretty consistent in what I'm writing, and most of the time I take it from, the perspective of, again, a type 1 who's living, with diabetes, but is a journalist, and so understands, that deadline pressure and maybe what went into it, and how I think, if I were approaching something like that, how I probably would have taken it. But I mean, again, a lot of it just depends on what they said or what they wrote specifically and kind of how you dub things. But I try to be pretty consistent in responding to everybody and, if there's an article online, at least commenting and then maybe writing a letter to, the reporter first. I always try to contact the reporter or the writer, if it's a columnist or an opinion writer, contact that person first, because I know as a reporter, something that kills me is when somebody complains about something that I've done to my editor first, and I have no say over whether it was right or wrong to begin with. I think that's the important lesson, is just because somebody says it's wrong doesn't mean it's wrong.
Exactly, and people like you are really contributing much to the type 1 diabetes or the information that's floating around through the web or in media. So the next question here is, you're a Sigma Pi Fraternity, and you live with some basic ideals and values. So how do you implement this in your diabetic life?
Well, I am. I'm a Sigma Pi. Have been since college, and there's a lot of stereotypes out there, I think, with fraternities and even sororities. And I don't think it's anything really new and far-fetched as far as implementing it in my daily life in my D world. I think one of our motto for Sigma Pi is it's progress, man's distinctive mark alone. And I think for me as a diabetic, that's one of the things that every day is a move forward. Whether it's a number that's too high or too low, it's an A1C that I'm not happy with for whatever reason. It's all part of a bigger path, down the road. And I think I'm always progressing, and I'm learning something based on whatever the information is, or what I'm doing out there, just in the world. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing, that I bring the fraternity ideals as far as progress, and being chivalrous, and respecting all people, and trying to just kind of keep a level-headed persona when I'm dealing with my diabetes, and not get too frustrated with it, or too ecstatic when my A1C is at the 5 level, which it's never been, but if it was.
That's very good. And recently, I know you posted this article, and also I read it in few articles. 55 to 60% of today's diabetes adults are missing either A1C, foot examination, eye examination, or their doctor's visit. So, do you think the people are still living in denial?
Yeah, I think we all are living in denial in some respects, every day. I think that was a newsletter that my county hospital sent me. Just totally, and I think it was focused on diabetes for, the stars aligning that issue. But I was a little surprised to see that stat, but I thought about it, and it really didn't surprise me when I thought about it, just because I have been kind of holding off on going to my endo and getting my A1C done, because I know my sugars have not been where they need to be, and I've been slacking in a lot of ways. So I've been holding off and doing that. So I fall into that stat, just right there. Same with the eye exams, and I do my own feet exams, but you get the point. Putting off some of these things, it may not exactly be denial, but maybe it's just kind of procrastination or slacking, or trying to not focus on them the way they should be focused on, for our best health.